Hey, what's going on, guys? Kalamazi here, and today Affliction Warlock has essentially been almost overhauled on 9.1 PTR. It being Thursday and not really hearing much about raid testing or anything of the sort, I was sort of wondering if we were even going to get a PTR build this week or raid testing. However, this morning when I woke up, there was talk about PTR build, and then I saw Shadow's Embrace had been moved to a talent and something had been moved around, and then things sort of spiraled out of control. And Affliction, I don't want to call it a complete overhaul, but the spec has really been changed. The core part is there. Things have changed. We'll get into it. We're going to talk about all the changes today, how it feels pretty similar in certain spots to Legion Affliction, and the ins and outs of all the changes, conduits, new talents, whatever, what have you, all of that. Any week ORS profiles or add-ons you see here, you can grab for free off my Twitch. If you want to swing by, hang out, ask any questions anytime, feel free to do so. At the same time, I want to give a huge shout out to all my patrons. Thank you so much for your support. If you are interested in the 9.1 Warlock spreadsheet, similar to the 9.0 Warlock spreadsheet, the tier 3 Felguard rank or higher of my Patreon does indeed get early access to that. I should be creating it, I would assume, in a few days whenever raid testing really kicks in. So if you're interested in that, feel free to check it out. With that being said, let's start off by talking about all of the changes today. There's a good bit. So I feel the easiest way to go about this is to just review the changes that we've seen on a while ahead, and then I'll have different timestamps, different sections of the video talking about the changes, because they're going to need their own spaces. Some of these are pretty big. Spoilers ahead, wrong tab. Anyways, so the Warlock changes today. Once again, this is not a complete overhaul to the class or the spec, more so. Destro and Demo didn't get anything today. Sorry, boys. Just, it is what it is. Maybe later on, Aff got a lot of changes. And to be fair, Aff was a spec that I felt needed the most changes because it was gutted. It was in a pretty bad state. Starting things off, Seed of Corruption. They buffed the spell power modifier by 10%. Now, this is 2 Seed of Corruption itself, so keep in mind, if you're playing some of the seeds, it's a 10% spell power buff essentially to each seed. So if you have 3 seeds with So, this is actually a pretty substantial buff when it comes to Mythic Plus, heavy AoE. Because number 1, Seed of Corruption is uncapped. And number 2, Rapture was nerfed. So Rapture was nerfed, and that sort of, in a sense, devalues Vile Taint, which has sort of been one of the 2 talents that you go to when it comes to Plus, either that or Phantom Singularity. But Rapture, nonetheless, was not where it's been before. It was nerfed, and it sort of left things. It felt things that we were a little lacking. But this seed buff, you'll see when we get later on in the video here, it's pretty big. Pretty big. When I read this, I was like, oh, cool, that's legit. Maybe Seed of Corruption would sow the seeds as actually a relevant talent in that row. I wish the cast time was a little shorter. 2.5 seconds is still a tiny bit too long, I feel personally. I'm sitting at about 25% haste now on beta and on live, and I have about a 2-second cast. It's fine, you can make it work, but at a certain point when the damage becomes so good, you just sort of deal with it. It's pretty good. Uncapped AoE, sort of the first step going back to Legion Aff. Number 2, this is a big one. Okay. Dark Caller reduces summon Darkler's cooldown by 60 seconds. Change from talents to specialization. So when I read this, I thought to myself, first of all, how is this going to work? But then something is not listed here. What they did. Affliction on PTR. So you know how Shadow's Embrace is like your baseline talent, one of your baseline abilities for Affliction? Well, that's gone now. Shadow's Embrace is back to being a talent in the same spot in the 45 row. What they did, it used to be a thing here, like as part of a baseline ability. They dragged Dark Caller from here to here and put Shadow's Embrace here when it was here. So Dark Caller, your Dark Glare is baseline 2 minutes now. This, to me personally, I think in general, this is a huge change. This is so big. Having your 3-minute Dark Glare and your 2-minute Dark Soul just felt terrible. It feels bad having these weird desync CDs, having these weird hold this for that. You have a big 2-minute window. You've got your Ruby, which gains more value now. You've got your Dark Soul. You got your Dark Glare. You've got your Blood Fury. You just go every 2 minutes. It's great. There's no, okay, the fight's 4.5 minutes long, so I go 0, 2, 4, 3, 6. No, you just hit it at 2 minutes and you go. Thank God. It's a great change. Awesome. And for the most part, Dark Caller wasn't really, I don't think Dark Caller was as powerful or as like relevant as they wanted it to be. If they had changed the way Dark Glare works after they removed the UA stacking and Death Bolt from BFA, Dark Caller could have been more relevant, but they never did. So actually making it a passive ability here is like a 5-head play. I really wish I had thought of it myself and just swapping the 2 around. It's a great change. So getting into Shadow's Embrace, it's back on this row here. Your option is Shadow's Embrace, Haunt, or Grimoire of Sacrifice. So your option is basically Shadow's Embrace or Haunt. This is a complete dumpster fire. So Haunt is your best de facto go-to ability. Now, there are some subtle differences between this Haunt and this Shadow's Embrace from BFA. This Haunt had its duration increased from, I believe, 16 or 15 to 18 seconds, but the cooldown is 15. So this Haunt in Shadowlands, you can have a higher uptime on it because of the cooldown versus actual uptime. Solid. Keep that in mind. Shadow's Embrace does indeed still have the 4-second bonus duration baked onto it. It is not 12 seconds, it is 16 now. It still stacks to 3, it's still 3% per stack, but they removed the 1 target limit. So number 1, that means you can shard snipe again and not move your Shadow's Embrace stacks around. That's great. Number 2, this puts you in a spot where essentially your Haunt is going to be, I would assume, your best de facto go-to single target ability in this row. And Shadow's Embrace is going to be your probably best option, like 2-target stuff. Think of like Queen's Court. Think of like fights where you're going to have 2 bosses present. You can juggle Shadow's Embrace on 2 targets, and that's probably fine. If you want to try it in 3 targets, go for it. But, you know, at this point. I also feel if you're playing this build in Mythic Plus, some mix of Drain Soul and whatever talent you have here, Shadow's Embrace is going to be your play too. It's a 1% difference, technically. But you can stack it on multiple targets, and it's just applied passively with Drain Soul too as well. Very strong option here. I'm a huge fan of this swap. I think it's a great idea. So Dark Color, Dark Lair, baseline 2 minutes, Shadow's Embrace, talent now. Everybody rejoice. Shadow's Embrace is gone. So you might be wondering, some weird change on this thing, it's whatever. What happened with Cold Embrace, the Conduit? Well, it was initially data mined as still being the same thing, like this, but they nerfed the percentages, and people were like, what happened? Why is this like this? Because it's a talent, but a conduit, it doesn't really work. They changed Cold Embrace. It's gone. It is now called Withering Bolt. This is the most overpowered conduit in the entire game, probably in the history of conduits. It will not last. I had a 75,000 Shadow Bolt crit earlier on PTR. We could have had a 90k, but it wouldn't crit when we had the big damage ends up with our pots. First of all, I don't want to hear in the comments, oh, you're getting AF nerfed. I'm not getting AF nerfed. This is blatantly obvious to anybody who plays the class. You can hide Boomkin stuff being good. You can hide Survival Hunters being good. You can't hide Warlocks, because you know what? People actually play Warlock, okay? You can't hide this stuff, all right? And you'll see, the Conduit is utterly insane. I don't want to hear it. Anyways, memes aside. So, it gives you a 20% damage amp to your Drain Soul per dot effect you have on the target. So number 1, that means that multiple dots are like 5 targets. It's only the dots you have on that target you're attacking with Drain Soul or Shadow Bolt. Now the question here was, Shadow Bolt has 40% damage increase per damage over time affecting the target. So we weren't sure if this was like essentially double what Drain Soul gives, or just 20% more baseline. So if we go into game here, I can show you. Here's the new Conduit. Withering Bolt. 32% damage increase for Drain Soul at 226. It's empowered, by the way. So it's 36 essentially, right? So 36 here. Let's swap to Nightfall, getting rid of Drain Soul. Oh. It's 72% per dot effect. It's literally like somebody forgot the decimal place between the 7 and the 2. Like, it's so incredibly insanely powerful. I don't know. It's like you're playing the next expansion at this point. I don't know. It's obviously going to get nerfed. It's quite literally like somebody forgot the decimal point. I had a 75k Shadow Bolt crit earlier playing Necro Lord, and you can have probably if that was on an under geared character with bad gear, you can have over 100k Shadow Bolt on PTR right now if you really set it up properly with the right covenant. Either way, this is roughly a 200, about a 300% damage amp. You're looking at 7, 140, 210, 280, about 288% damage amp to your target you hit with the Shadow Bolt, just by maintaining Agony, Siphon, Corruption, and UA. That's literally it. It's utterly insane. It is so incredibly overpowered. It's single target based, but it is so good. So this is a new Conduit. It's going to get nerfed. It's going to get nerfed whether I make a video on it or not, but it is very, very, very good. Now, Shadow's Embrace was removed, but this is sort of like a single target DPS gain, and it's probably going to be one of our more powerful conduits in patchwork fights, as long as it's not completely destroyed and nerfed into the ground. It sort of has a Malefic Grasp kind of feel to it too. I gotta say, I'm really impressed with how Blizzard designed this version of AF, while giving homage to Malefic Grasp AF, while keeping Rapture around, while also getting the seeds buff. Like, it actually is really, really impressive, because your dots being up sort of matter, but your Shadow Bolt, your Drain Soul, when you're casting your fillers with your dots up and maintaining them, you're doing more damage. It's really, really, really strong. The final thing, change-wise today, I guess there's two more things. Corruption was buffed. They buffed corruption by about 12% roughly. So you want more dots to do more damage. Hey, they're doing more damage. Good change. Mythic Plus buff, Council buff, even single target buff. Solid change. I sort of expected this with the just nerfs to Affliction. The corruption buff, that is. I did not expect this, but solid nonetheless. The final thing here, Dark Pack was buffed. Again, it is a very large shield now, about 32k, give or take. Shelly mentioned earlier on stream that this buff means that if you pop it at a lower health, you're going to have a larger baseline shield, because it's a baseline spell power modifier, which is very true. They keep buffing Dark Pact. It's so incredibly strong right now. I have 45k and I pop it and I have a 32k shield. It's incredibly OP, but hey, I'm not going to complain anymore. So with all that being said, we have single target implications, we have AoE implications, we have legendary implications, we have a lot of things that are changing with the spec, and a lot of answers we don't really have. What happens with Covenants? Honestly, I don't know. We're gonna have to wait for Sims for that, but I can talk about rotations and things a good bit today. And also what we really need to wait for is the Withering Bolt nerf, because it's coming. It's gonna be pretty big. Let's talk a little bit about the single target stuff and then get into the AoE stuff. It feels a lot like Legion Affliction. So when you're looking at single target stuff in legendaries, the big question here is, okay, Shadow Bolt and Drain Soul have been buffed damage wise through this new effect, Withering Bolt. Does that add value to Malefic Wrath? The answer is yes, it adds value to Malefic Wrath. Now, the good thing is that synergy is so that you can just play, set it and forget it and move around. You don't really have to like plant for it. Malefic Wrath is going to cost, it's more of like a stationary kind of effect. You can still move around, but you have to maintain the buff. The bad thing about synergy, though, it's RNG. I'm sure I'm the only one who's gotten a synergy proc in their opener one boss and none on the next one, and your damage is terrible. It's a there's a big difference there. But either way, it does indeed add value to Malefic Wrath. Now, it's a different rotation, but it's still impressive. So the question here is Nightfall. Nightfall buff Shadow Bolt damage. So does Withering Bolt. So does Malefic Wrath. So does a handful of other random things. At the same time, Drain Soul, if you're an Execute, does 100% more damage. So the big question here is, which one is better? I've gotten this question a good bit, and honestly, it's sort of hard to answer because without Sims and really everything else, we just don't really know. But I can say the damage that Shadow Bolt and Drain Soul both put out is really impressive. It's a lot. So like we opened up here, you want to Rapture 3 times for your actual effect. There's a crit buff. Start Shadow Bolting. Put your Haunt up, just maintain this, and like your bolts hit really hard. If you get an actual Decimating or a Nightfall proc in your opener here, like that, this bolt, 30k. It's a 30k bolt, and that's on the lower end. I had a 75k Shadow Bolt hit earlier. That was an 11k white hit right there. They hit so incredibly hard. As far as like throughput and consistency goes with damage, Nightfall and Shadow Bolt has indeed seemed to feel better, maybe be a little better. I know my legendary effect fell here, it's fine. Look at the damage amp though from this. It's 31%, and I barely even had the effect up half the time. A 30k crit. It's so utterly incredibly insane. It's ridiculous. Now I know dots aren't dealing damage, keep it as much, keep in mind they're gonna nerf this, it is what it is, but it changes if you're playing Malefic Wrath, and just in general this Conduit changes the rotation of the spec a bit. You want to maintain your dots and try and fill with Shadow Bolts. So in your opener, instead of just going, you know, all your dots, dump all your Raptures and fill, you want to dump a handful of them, but maintain like a shard or two, dump a few Shadow Bolts, maybe get a Nightfall proc, and then Rapture again to refresh the buff, and then try and chain that buff as far as possible. Now you're still holding your PS for your Soul Rot and everything, I would assume, but it makes it sort of harder to get the actual Rapture value in things that you normally would. We can see how big can this one actually get. Let's see here, launch it. Casual Shadow Bolt hitting for 13k, would have been about a 27k crit, and that's not even during our CD window. The damage from this effect is so incredibly strong. Now through testing, I feel that Nightfall is stronger when it comes to like general consistency over the course of the fight. But if you're looking at like a fight that needs a lot of execute damage, Drain Soul will indeed, I feel personally, be better. The Malefic Wrath effect stacking with Drain Soul stacking with other effects and execute is really, really, really strong. We can take a look at that opener too. But either way, having this effect, it changes the rotation, I feel, in a fun way. It's actually enjoyable. Now dots, once again, will deal more damage at a certain point once they change things and tune things, all of that. But it's really, really strong. And there is a little bit of RNG in Nightfall, I will say, I will admit, but still, it's so much better from where we've been, with Rapture being 40% of our damage. Yeah, Shadow Bolt might be 27. It's not gonna last though. it'll get nerfed. But it makes the spec feel more fluent. It makes it feel like different abilities actually do damage. When it comes to the actual opener for Shadow or for a Drain Soul, it's basically the same thing. Just opening up on your Haunt into your UA. Agony, Corruption, Siphon, PS, Dark Soul, Ruby, Soul Rot. You hit your Dark Lair here, and you want to Rapture 3 times. 1 stack, 2 stack, 3 stack, dump your Drain. Look at the Drain here, man. Look at the Drain just gaining value. Look at this game. Look at it go. Like, just hey, we're draining. Hey, we're draining, boys. We're just draining here. Just Drain Soul things. Just Drain Soul things. It's really strong. And imagine that in Execute. Now, you do have to maintain your actual effect here, which means you're not going to get as much value necessarily in Rapture windows. But keep in mind, those Rapture windows aren't all about just buffing, just raw buffing your damage when it comes to other things. They're about having that 6th dot, that 5th dot, the PS with the Soul Rod up, with the other 4, that increases your Shadow Bolt damage or your Drain Soul damage even more. It feels a bit like Necro Lord did on beta a long time ago, but nowhere near as finicky or as like rotationally, I don't know, specific, narrow. It's really strong. And even outside of Malefic Wrath, if you're not playing this effect, yeah, okay, you know, you'll probably have a very similar synergy, just Rapture opener, Rapture windows, but you're still having extra damage from this Conduit. It's so incredibly strong, it's powerful, and it makes it have that Malefic Grasp kind of feel. You're dealing a lot more damage when you're channeling your Drain Soul, when you're casting your Shadow Bolt. It just feels better. And even though, once again, like Malefic Wrath Rapture's a decent bit of our damage, Drain Soul's a good bit here too. It's going to be nerfed. And when it is, you're looking at a much more healthy, I feel, just damage breakdown, damage profile. But the really cool thing I feel is when it comes to AoE. So now that we've seen a little bit of the single target implications, let's talk Shadowlands Affliction with Sow the Seeds. If you guys wanted the return of Legion, Affliction, and Mythic Plus, this is probably as close as we're going to get to it without going back and time walking, which, yeah, you know. So I'm gonna say I've enjoyed playing Siphon Life AF and Mythic Plus. It's been a lot of fun, but I am also really excited to put that behind me and look on to better times and things where I actually not playing a mini game inside of an actual game, juggling 15 dots on 4 targets. Siphon Life's been fun to play, and I will still say this build here, when it comes to Plus, is going to be your best single target build. Probably, but trash is an important part of Mythic Plus, and the fact that we have another talent that's viable, or I guess viable, Shadow's gonna kill me, relevant in this row is a good thing. So keep in mind, Agony was buffed by 20% a few weeks ago. Corruption buffed by 10%. However, if you're playing Sow the Seeds, which is what we're going to test with here, there's not really a whole lot of reason I feel or merit to play Absolute Corruption, because more or less you're just spamming Corruption anyway, so it's essentially permanent on its own. So Writhe gets a lot more value. So Writhe, so Shadow's Embrace, Dark Soul, Misery. Now you can play Haunt here, it's fine if you want. You're going to play Drain Soul for shard snapping anyways, most likely. So you can play Shadow's Embrace just for it being baked in. Either way, it's up to you. You'll probably get a little bit of like Shadow's Embrace stacking on your main target here, but I'm not stressing over it either way. The best thing about this, you ready guys? You ready? We're playing Perpetual Agony, by the way. I made it some PTR. The best thing about this build is that it's so simple. You put out your seeds, you roll your agonies, you pop your Dark Soul, you go into it, you put up your UA, hit your Soul Rot, you hit your Ruby, you hit your Dark Lair, whatever, hit the Lust, why not? Spam seed. Just hit your seed, man. Just start seeding. Just start seeding, and look at your damage. It just goes, man. It just keeps going. You're generating seeds, shards like crazy. You just keep hitting seed. Refresh your agonies, why not? Agony, agony, catch them before they fall. I'm lagging, it's so much actual seeds going out. Go back to casting your seeds. There's an actual shard. There's another shard. You just keep going. It feels like Legion F, I'm gonna be honest, man. Like, seed is actually relevant again. The damage is solid. And you're just maintaining agony, your UA, and casting your seeds. And when it comes to single target, Writhe and Agony will indeed be a better option than Absolute Corruption. You can maintain your Shadow's Embrace if you want, why not? There you go, put up your UA, and you're just swimming in shards. And I'm gonna be honest, even when we didn't play Perpetual Agony, when we were playing Synergy, the shard gen still felt fine. It felt maybe a tiny bit worse than this, maybe about 20% worse than this, but it was still really solid. And oh look, Soul Rot's up again. Let's go. We can do it again. And guess what's up in a minute? Our Dark Lair and our Dark Soul, because they've reworked it to actually be a fluent, awesome well flowing spec. It feels so much better instead of having to go Writhe in Agony or sorry, Siphon Life with Rolling Agony, 10 different dots, trying to play Corrupting Leer to get your Dark Lair to a 2-minute build. It just feels so much better having your Dark Soul, having your Dark Lair, having your Ruby, having your Blood Fury, having whatever you want line up at basically the 2-minute mark. Now, when you're in Mythic Plus, there's going to be mechanics you have to react to. You're not going to be able to sit here and just spam Seed over and over and over. I would like there to be some kind of cast time reduction to Seed, quite possibly. I think the cast time is probably still a little long. I'm probably going to pull a couple shards here. I think the cast time probably still is a little bit too long. But either way, look, we've got Dark Soul. We've got Ruby, Blood Fury, everything in 10 seconds. And guess what? There's Dark Soul now. Hit a Seed. Why not? Hit your Ruby. There's your Soul Rot. Hit your Dark Lair, start spamming Seed. There you go. I hit like 32k, I think, overall earlier by just spamming Seed on these. Like, the damage is actually there. Like, you just cast Seed over and over and over, and you're not playing a minigame inside of a minigame with Siphon Life on 4 mobs and Rolling Agonies. It just feels so much better. It really, truly just does. Now, you might end up playing Rolling Agony in the first place, unless you can find some way to get Corrupting Leer. Unless you can play Corrupting Leer in like your 3rd Conduit slot and maybe give like a 1-minute Dark Lair, because Dark Hauler is baseline now. Oh, by the way, look at the damage breakdown. Let's make that a little bigger. 50% Seed damage, 20% Agony, 11% Corruption, 7.6% Soul Rot. We are indeed playing Soul Eater here for what it's worth, but yeah, I'm excited. I'm very excited. And the cool thing about this build is that, yeah, Soul might not be a strong, it's an AoE based talent, but you're able to play Writhe here, and Writhe is not bad in single target. It's actually pretty close to Siphon Life. I think it's about 100 or so, 150 DPS off, give or take, when it comes to that. And you have Dark Caller baseline. Like, Dark Caller just feels, having a 2-minute window feels so much better, and you have the option of either Shadow's Embrace or Haunt. So even playing this build, you're still bringing a similar dot to Siphon Life. You're still bringing a Haunt or Shadow's Embrace effect, and you're bringing Dark Caller with Dark Soul with a huge 2-minute like damage window. I don't know how this is going to pan out in Mythic Plus. I don't know, but man, it feels good to be casting Seed of Corruption and just going back to better times again. This, whatever happens with this version of Affliction, whether they nerf the crap out of this Conduit, they're going to nerf it really badly. It's good because the actual baseline toolkit is there. It's no longer a 3-minute Dark Lair and a weird CD here and this and that. The baseline toolkit is there. Shadow's Embrace is essentially gone unless you want it. You have a big 2-minute damage window. The baseline toolkit is just good. Previously, the spec was just good because the damage was tuned well. It was just overtuned in a sense, but the toolkit was garbage. Now the spec is good. Now the spec feels good. It's built well. Tuning can be changed, but changing specs, that's a little tougher to do. I'm surprised we got these changes, but I'm really happy about them. Let's talk briefly about a few Covenant interactions and what might be come 9.1. So this character is nowhere near as good as my actual Nightfay character. I've had this character on PTR for a while. He's playing like a beaver and an old badge and everything. When it comes to different covenants, Necro Lord, Decimating Bolt, Shadow Bolt, Drain Soul Damage Amps, it's obviously very powerful. When it comes to being in execute range, it's very, very good. This is the character that we had the 75k bolt on earlier. I doubt I can replicate it, but we can give it a brief shot here. Either way, so we get our dots up, open up like normal, pop our PS, we can Dark Soul, pop this, pop Decimating Bolt, pray for an actual Drain or Nightfall proc here. We haven't gotten one, Rapture 3 times. I'm gonna wait, see if we get one. There it is. Refresh the Haunt, pray for a big crit, launch it. 40k. That's literally an 81,000 damage Shadow Bolt. If that crits, that's 81,000 damage. Right there. Right there. It's utterly insane. It's going to get nerfed. There's no way around it. But when it comes to Covenants, Necrolord is good for this. Necrolord is going to be the one that empowers your new Withering Blight or Bolt Conduit the most. Hands down, not even close. But Necrolord is still single target based. There's no kind of spread AoE. There's no like mastery buff. Many's intellect buff doesn't really count. There's no Grove Invigoration. There's no impending catastrophe AoE dot being spread. Venthyr still sucks. I'm just saying in general. Necrolord is single target based. Kyrian is single target based in a sense too, but when it comes to Kyrian things, you have Scouring Tithe, which is essentially going to be a 5th dot that you maintain most of the time. You're not really going to be, there's not going to be a point in time you don't have Scouring Tithe active. You're gonna have it up basically all the time unless the mob dies, and if you're gonna patchwork setting, that's gonna be the end of the fight. So that gives you straight up with Shadow Bolt roughly what, a 72% additional damage amp playing this Conduit here. This is a 213 Conduit as well. This character is incredibly underpowered. If I had an actual geared character as a Necro Lord, these bolts would be over 100k if they crit. It would be utterly insane. If you play Necro Lord, you'll have an insane single target damage profile. I don't know raw numbers wise if it's better than Night Fae, if it's better than whatever. I don't know. It's a sim thing. We don't even have the Warlock legendaries at this point. But Necro Lord has a very strong interaction with this build. When it comes to Kyrian, you're going to have the extra 72% passive bonus effect to Shadow Bolt, or 68, whatever it is, or the extra 34% to Drain Soul, which if you're in execute range with Drain Soul, it does a lot of damage. I can do an opener again here and just show you the raw damage amount that Drain Soul does. It's about 40-ish%, give or take. But once again, when it comes to Night Fae and stuff, Night Fae, let me reset this here. Night Fae is just going to have, it has the AoE implications. It has the Soul Rod. It has, which is 4 targets, obviously. And Soul Rod itself does good damage. Depending on what other conduits and things are introduced, we might not even like the Soul Rod conduit might not actually be that bad. It's a 40% damage increase on top of it, which is not bad at all. This drain, like, by the way, hey, 56% of our damage for draining. Let's rapture again. Draining 51%, and our dots are falling here, so I'm looking at the actual meter. Like, the drain is insane in execute. It's so incredibly strong. We had a tick. That's not a crit, or this is not a full drain here, by the way. This is a tick of Drain Soul. Drain Soul ticks multiple times over the course of the channel. We had 1 tick of Drain Soul being 30,000 damage. That's like 2 Chaos Bolts. 2 full Chaos Bolts versus 1 tick. That drain with 2 crits is over 100k. Easy. Necro Lord has an insane single target execute damage profile with Drain Soul, and even outside of that has a really good single target one. Kyrian, a bit more consistency. Night Fae has Soul Rot, the mastery buff, a bit more consistency, I guess, as well, but not the extra dot in Soul Rot not being permanent like Scouring Tithe to maintain the full extra 72% damage amp from Withering Blight or whatever. When it comes to Venthyr, they just suck. Sorry. That's the truth. Venthyr's not very good. I'm not saying that Necro Lord's better than Night Fae. I'm not saying that Kyrian's be better. I am saying we don't have legendaries, and this conduit's going to be nerfed. There is no chance this conduit makes it probably even to raid testing next week. It's going to be nerfed really, really soon, I would assume. But the cool thing is, depending where they actually nerf it and how much they actually nerf it, this new version of Affliction has potentially a really strong single target damage profile, a good AoE damage profile, and the better thing is that, hey, you don't have to worry about Shadow's Embrace and single target anymore. I'm still, out of habit, draining for Shadow's Embrace. I'm still doing it. Like, oh yeah, I should drain here. Nope. Don't have to do it anymore. It feels good. Afflock feels like it should be, like it should have been, like what we were suggesting in things when it came to literal beta a year and X days ago. It feels really good. I'm really excited about it. And dude, who doesn't want to drain like this, man? Who doesn't want to drain like this? Okay. It might be a little excessive. So yeah, that's that. Thanks for watching, dudes. This version of AF feels really good. I'm not gonna lie. There's still a lot of questions that need to be answered, like what covenant is technically simming the best. We haven't even seen Warlock legendaries in the first place for 9.1, so that could change a handful of things. Zyro earlier was talking about like Shadow's Embrace versus Haunt and pure single target, and not having to cast the Haunt, because that technically means you get more Shadow Bolt cast or more Drain Soul ticks. Maybe SE is still our best choice in single target. I don't know. We'll see. But either way, this new version of AF feels really good. I'm really, really excited to play this in raid testing next week. I assume next week, both in single target and dungeons. I gotta admit, like the Seed spam just, it feels really good. It's really exciting. It's really awesome. And when it comes to Mythic Plus environment, we haven't really had that kind of build or feel since Legion, you know. And having the 26% haste or whatever I have now, I think I have 26. I'm looking at it right here. The seed cast time doesn't feel that bad. I wish it was a little shorter, but the big thing when it comes to playing seed and plus is like seed doesn't replace doesn't replace Rapture when you take it. You can still cast Seed with for a good bit of the trash pack, and when it's dying, if you're shard capped, just Rapture your shards away, because Rapture's like a 1.2 second cast time versus Seed being 2 with like 26-ish% haste, and just drain shards back. Put your UA up, get shards, go to the next pack. This version of AF is really flexible, and the important thing to take away from this is that the toolkit is just good. It's not like AF in 9.0 and 9.0.5 where it's okay, sort of clunky, but the damage is really good. It's just tuned well. The baseline toolkit is good. Tuning can come. They can buff and nerf certain abilities, but redesigning baseline toolkits, changing Dark Lur's cooldown, adding new talents, removing things, that typically doesn't happen a whole lot in PTR cycles. It's more alpha and beta stuff, so be excited about this. And at the same time, Demonology is still good single target. This version of AF will be nerfed. There's no way around it. It's going to be nerfed. The single target will be. But when it comes to the seed spam, the Conduit doesn't affect the seed spam at all. It's just there. It's just good. It's just exciting. It's just fun. Agony was buffed. Corruption was buffed. I think we're in a pretty good spot. Hopefully over the next few days, we'll know more about Necro Lord, Kyrian, Night Phase Sims, all of that. Maybe some legendaries coming out next week, and then raid testing. So we'll see where it goes. Warlock, at this point in time, it's early on PTR, but it's shaping up to look pretty good. Aff looks solid. Demo's still good in single target, insane stamina scaling. And Destro looks good in 2 target as well. I don't want anybody to think that Destro and Demo are bad, because they're not. They're still good. We were still topping meters playing Demo and Destro last week. Any Week Warriors profiles or add-ons you see here, you can grab for free off my Twitch. If you want to swing by, hang out, ask any questions anytime, feel free to do so. If you guys have any questions, feel free to drop them in the comment section below. I'll be sure to get back to you. Huge shout out. Thank you so much again to all my patrons. Thank you for the support. If you're interested in the 9.1 Warlock spreadsheet, similar to the 9.0 one that I made, the tier 3 Felguard rank or higher of my Patreon does indeed get early access to that. I should be working on it within the next few days whenever raid testing and things go up, but we actually have things to put on the document and make. I'm very excited about it. If you guys are new here and enjoyed the content, be sure to hit the like and subscribe buttons below as well. Helps out a lot. Thank you so much, dudes, and I'll catch you all again soon on stream. Lock's looking good, boys. Peace.